Now what I have is actually approximately 30 cards that I would change, which is like about 1/4 to 1/5 meth. Yes, 1/4 to 1/5. It's worth mentioning that of the cards I would change, I have not changed some of the cards that I think are bad, but some of the cards that aren't going to be played, they're fine cards that would be bad, but they're just not like quite bad enough, or they're unique enough to still just be worth being in there for basic things. I'm going to present a series of first Inspire cards that I would change. Easy enough is Argent Watchman, first of all. The drawback is severe enough that just being able to activate it to be able to attack is a bit too much, so I bumped it up to a 3/4. That puts it between Ancient Watcher and like a 2/3 range. I think this is a pretty easy change. I don't think it would make too many waves. It might still not be a good card. In fact, in many of these cases, all that I've done is make the card less bad. Okay, this is like a 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10. If you make it a 2-mana 3/4, it's still not a top tier level card. It's like maybe a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10. And then maybe it sneaks its way into some of the cards, some of the decks, and like it can be used. That would be interesting, but to have it just be a 2/4, that's a waste of a card slot. Here's another card that the Inspire was like budgeted for. Even a 4-mana 3/5 with spell damage +1 wouldn't be quite good enough, but then you add the Inspire, gain spell damage +1, and I think this is also a little more interesting because it puts two mechanics together. That's how I would change it, to make the card a bit more flavorful, to have a spell damage immediately, and just have it still have the Inspire effect. For most of these cards, I'm only going to change something small, like raise a stat by 1 or change a little bit of text. This one just turns out to be something where I'm just going to even add spell damage +1. We have the good old Coliseum Manager, joked on by everyone about how I would love to have something get sapped into my hand, but hey, this one, like, again, this is not going to push this into a crazy insane card, but now, like, you can actually serve the purpose of killing something, and then, like, when you do return it to your hand, you have a more likely chance of playing it again for cheaper. It's still bad, I think, but the point is, I raised the level of this card from like a 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 into something like a 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10, something like this. Like, there's some cards that, you know, we haven't actually even played with these cards yet, but you can just read them, and if you've played the game enough at a top level, you can tell based off the stat level that the card is not going to be good. You know, I haven't done any balance testing, but I can get the feeling, the sense that Coliseum Manager normal wouldn't be played, and this one is a more interesting card, which still probably wouldn't get played, but is what I'd like the design to be more towards. Another Inspire card, which is extremely awful. Dragonhawk Rider could have just said Wind Fury on it, and a 3-mana 3/3 Wind Fury probably wouldn't be played. In fact, I think my change is still too weak, kind of mirroring Raging Worgen, except you just activate it with your hero power. I think if this were the card that Blizzard originally had, I would try to push it even more. But, you know, just something like this, just making a truly terrible card just slightly less bad. Valdir Raider. Floating Watcher can be kind of thought of as a bit of a stepping stone for Inspire. Blizzard could kind of see how well it fared. It didn't fare at all. I decided to push it up even a bit more. 5-mana 5/5. Like, this is still not OP. Just something that's a bit better when you just first play it down. If you want to pay 7 mana for a 7/7, then you have that option and you get the hero power with it. And if you want to just play a 5-mana 5/5, that's fine. One of the things to think about with Inspire is there's obviously a lot of combinatorics, as Eric Dodd said. Every hero is going to use their hero power a little differently, but probably the simplest thing to think about Inspire with is with the Paladin, because you can kind of estimate that Inspire or the hero power is going to be worth roughly a 1/1, and then you can balance all the Inspire cards based off of that. So if you were to run Valdir Raider normal in Paladin, then you would get a 5-mana 4/4 or a 7-mana 7/7 with Cavalier Raider making a guy and gaining +2/+2. With this new Cavalier Raider, you get either a 5 mana 5/5 or 7 mana kind of 8/8, where you get the 7/7 and you make a guy. And even so, I don't think this card would be run because Floating Watcher isn't run. When I think about it, Floating Watcher probably wouldn't be run in any other deck. Still, you make it a little bit better without the other way that Floating Watcher can get buffed through like Hellfire or Flame Imp, and it's still not as good, but it pushes the theme a bit more. It makes Inspire a bit more playable. Mukhlis Champion is so bad. Lowering the mana cost of a card generally makes a card good, or insane, or broken, but I've actually lowered the mana cost on Mukhlis Champion by 1, and it's still bad, but the point is, it takes it from like absolute trash tier to possibly worth thinking about it all in some way. You compare this to a Stormwind Champion still, which is 7 mana. You play Mukhlis Champion, and then you use your hero power, whatever it is. Like, suppose it's make a guy. So you pay 6 mana, and you get a 4/3, and you get a 2/2, and that's just a 6/5, 6 mana 6/5. If you have any other guys, then you have more guys, and that's like, it actually starts making Mukhlis Champion worth like thinking about. But Mukhlis Champion original is bleh. This one's just a minor change, and it goes to show like some of the Inspire cards are pretty close to the mark. You can compare the Recruiter to like a Ancient of Lore, like I did in my review video. If you think of it as Ancient of Lore, then basically, say you're playing Warlock, you play the 5 mana 5/4, you use the hero power immediately, then it's like you paid 7 mana for 5 mana 5/4, draw 2 cards. If you're Warlock even. I mean, that's considering the Squire though as a card. But really, the Squire isn't quite as good as a card because it's in the late game and you aren't going to want a 1 mana 2/2 as much. So, just bumped it up by 1 health. That makes it more likely that you can actually play the Recruiter on 5, and then it's a 5/5. And even though some of these like might push the card from bad or even only slightly bad to reasonable to slightly good, I just think it's better to have more options. Void Crusher is a card which I don't think the mana reduction changes that much. You were never really going to play Void Crusher and then use your hero power and Warlock on the same turn, probably, unless you somehow had like Implosion out already and had like a bunch of imps. Most likely this was going to get cheated out by Void Color anyways, if you even were to think about playing this card in your deck, and it's a pretty interesting effect, but I think it obviously costs too much as 6, and it probably still costs too much at 5, but now it costs 1 mana less. The Spawn of Shadows was already like better than Lost Tall Strider, one could say, because it's 4 mana 5/4 class card with a power. But here's the thing, there's absolutely no priest decks out there which would even consider running this deck. So you push the envelope a bit. Like this one, a 4 mana 5/5, this is something. But here's the thing, the Inspire ability can be thought of perhaps not synergizing that much with Priest. Like, this is something that I acknowledge that me changing this card to this actually makes it kind of like insane or something. First of all, the thing to realize is there is no face Priest deck, and second is like all Priest decks like to be control, so in some ways this can be thought of as a downside, and I think it's important to like push a little bit of edginess in your design. Like, this is a mix of a drawback and an interesting new direction. The 4 mana 5/4 would never get played, but the 4 mana 5/5 with this ability, that's interesting, I think. So those were the Inspire cards, and just overall you can see from the theme that I think Inspire was valued a little too highly, but I didn't change a few of them, because I do think that bad cards can exist, especially when they're like simpler cards which kind of explain the mechanic. For example, Lowly Squire. Lowly Squire doesn't get played anywhere, but I couldn't actually think of a way to buff it such that it wouldn't be horribly imbalanced, and it is fine for there to be some basic like examples of Inspire on a normal easy card like Lowly Squire. Now onto another main mechanic of the Grand Tournament that I thought wasn't pushed enough, the Jousting mechanic. I thought the concept of Joust was cool, but the thing is, I don't think it rewarded you quite enough. I don't think some of the cards rewarded you quite enough. There are a few cards which are really good, such as the Tuskar Jouster and the Shaman Healing card, but I feel like there is a slight missed opportunity to add in a bit more of a bonus. Starting with Armored Warhorse, you can see with my change, it's strictly better now than Lost Tallstrider, but let me say this. I am not opposed to power creep in the sense of buffing a card which is not played at all. But for now, don't worry about it, and this is Armored Warhorse. As stands, it had absolutely no chance of being played, and with the change, it still probably isn't going to get played at all, but now it has a slightly higher edge, slightly better chances, and that's just, again, what I hope. I want the cards to be not bad enough that they don't see any consideration at all, but like within a band of consideration. Good old Gadgetzan Jouster. By the way, this card I'm actually okay with as stands, but because it would be a good basic implementation of a Joust card, but I guess I still just want to submit a more interesting one. Gadgetzan Jouster I think is not going to be run at all because it's not better than Zombie Chow enough, and the Joust mechanic, like, it doesn't push enough. But with this new edgy card, Gadgetzan Jouster version 2, it could become a 3-3 or a 1-1. The thing is, with Gadgetzan Jouster version 2, you would still have to put it in a control deck, and you would actually have to like design your deck, try to get the Joust working more often. And if you have a control deck, like the fact that you have a 3-3 earlier on isn't going to be that big a deal. You kind of control the board, and in the case that you haven't built your deck around Joust, it's just a 1-1, so there you have it. Some of the cards that I'm pushing do push the envelope a bit, I'm going to admit, and they would require testing, and I'm sure like Blizzard has tested some of them and are like, whoa, that one's crazy, we tried it, it was crazy. Sure, some of them maybe you don't do, but I'm just putting examples of cards that would seem exciting and want people to actually try out this Joust mechanic more. Master Jouster, this one, Sunwalker is being played a bit, so that's pretty exciting, but I think the Joust just doesn't have enough stakes, so I feel like if you win the Joust, you go for an Ogre with Taunt and Divine Shield. Like, as before, it wouldn't get played, but now, and it would actually take advantage of the Joust mechanic more, then you have the chance of a 5-6, or when you win the Joust, you actually have like a really good card. Oh, good old Skeleton Knight. With a bit of a changing, and a good old 6-6-6 is a bit more evil for the Skeleton Knight. Now we can actually possibly play it. A 6-mana 6-6 with a Joust, sometimes you get to get it back into your hand when you play it, and then you have to play the 6-mana 6-6 again. Like, this would be a pretty fascinating legendary, I think. The old one, the stats are just not good enough at all. It fights, it's pretty solid, it could like be the next really good card. Get him. The poor Argent Lance, this is probably one of the cards that I was most disappointed by, because even if you do win the Joust, you only get a 2-mana 2-3, which wasn't even that good. So let's make it so that if you win the Joust, you actually get a 3-3, because in this case, like, the 2-2 is not that good, but kind of playable sometimes. But if you get a 2-mana 3-3, this one's pretty cool. With this case, you would actually have a control deck. Like, you would try to win the Joust, and then if you didn't, meh. If you did, then woo, that's pretty good. It's real good. That's my general thing about the Joust cards. It turns out that based off of the odds, because you have a pretty high chance of like tying and then losing anyways, I wanted the Joust cards to be cards that you would want to like design a bit more for your deck and get a bit more benefit if you were to win. Alright, so now just the other cards that I thought could use a bit of improvement. The Beast Druid thing, I thought that this one was weak. Like, if we're trying to push Beast Druid to be a thing, then I think the Beast synergy needed to be a bit more. So with a cut off the mana on the Knot of the Wild, this one has a much greater chance of going on. Because first of all, the Druid Beast deck doesn't even exist yet, And if we're going to like try to make cards to make the beast deck work, we need at least some ones that are reasonable. This one obviously fits into the synergy of beast druids. A 5 mana 6/6 is good, a 4 mana 6/6 is insane. Perhaps you could even weaken the stats a bit. Like now that I look at this, I'm like, oh wow, maybe that's a bit too much. Maybe a 6 mana 5/6. But yeah, a 7 mana 6/6 just wasn't quite enough, I'd say. Acid Maw. This one was hilariously underpowered. No one's gonna run a 7 mana 4/2, even if you can unleash the hounds and like kill everything, or even if you can combo it with the other part of the Hunter Legendary. So it was so weak that we're just gonna lower the mana cost and it'll still be bad, but you know, now it's less bad. Some of the cards I did push to be like playable at competitive levels, or even like really exciting, but I think it's important to have some of those. In this case, like some of them just need to be not absolute trash tier, at least by making more options and by trying to like come up with things that are like within 10%, I'd say, of the playable. Then there's so many more options to consider. Like as stands, everyone can just look at Acid Maw and be like, no, I'm not going to put Acid Maw in my deck. You look at the second Acid Maw and honestly you probably still say, no, I'm still not going to put Acid Maw in my deck, but now it's a little bit more. Ball of Spiders, what a cool idea, getting like 3/1/1 web spinners. But it was like competitive with Savannah Highmane, you can't put that many 6 slots in your deck. I did do the math on this, and it's like, you compare it to Nourish, 5 mana, draw 3 cards. When you're actually putting 3 web spinners on the board, that's like a little bit better than Nourish, it's true. But we're trying to push like a Control Hunter anyways, so we're gonna want a card that's low, that gains value over time. We could have helped them out a bit by like actually making Ball of Spiders more playable. The Stable Master. This was a card that pushed things in a bit more of a different direction. You're using the beast to trade, so again pushing some kind of more controlling hunter. The thing is, compared to the Hound Master, the old Stable Master was just like never going to get played. And this one like has just slightly better stats, and maybe it has a better chance. It's still like hard to find a slot in it, but I think it's more likely then. Eadric the Pure. This is something that I'm going to admit, Eadric the Pure could actually be a good card. But the thing is, Control Paladin, and even Midrange Paladin, isn't seen that much that I'm willing to like start off Eadric the Pure at a higher level. This is the type of thing that would have been playtested a lot, and on this one I'm not going to push too hard because I could actually be wrong on Eadric the Pure. And obviously Blizzard did test this at 4/7. I'm going to just say that. They did, because it's so obvious that they would have. Don't pay too much attention to this one, but it's more of a Control Paladin card, and the point that I'm trying to say with this one is like, I'm more willing to put in a better card for the decks that, for the archetypes, for the classes that aren't represented as much. Oh, the Priest cards. Such a shame, the Priest. The Priest didn't actually get very many things in this expansion, and they got a lot of like fun little toys, but it turns out that fun toys aren't good enough. Confuse is an example. Like, you're never actually going to put in Confuse in a deck, I think, just to like play around with stuff. This one was so weak and so situational that I was like, you know, there used to be a Priest card called Fade, which gave all your minions taunt and then drew you a card. This would be the perfect type of effect to put draw a card at the end of. You just put a, like, draw a card onto an interesting effect, and then it gets played a lot more. Convert was pretty simple. It cost too much. When I thought of this compared to Faceless, I became even more convinced that 2 mana was just far too much for Convert. Because you're obviously going to convert something which is value on the opponent's side, but Faceless just costs 3 more, so whatever you're converting, you're probably hoping to play eventually, and whatever you're converting probably costs more than 3 mana. So when you think of it that way, like, Convert would never ever see play because of Faceless, but with a 1 mana Convert, that pushes a more like control style of Priest. It pushes the things everyone loves most about Priest to like just steal your opponent's stuff. Probably most importantly is I don't think that 1 mana to selectively draw a card is that strong. I think this would have made it a really interesting card. Poor Anubarak. So again, Control Rogue wasn't a thing, so I think you could have erred on the side of more powerful rather than less powerful. And I think if like the original card were an 8 mana 8/4 when it was revealed, I still would have like put this in this video and then possibly thought about making it even stronger. But 9 mana was just far too much. It's not going to be seen as an engine where you play the Anubarak in the late game and then you keep playing Anubarak. I actually forgot about something that I was going to put in here. The 9 mana version might still be interesting. And then you put in like the other text can't be silenced. And then that makes it so that Anubarak is like a guaranteed, you're always paying 9 mana, and then your opponent keeps having to deal with just 4 health, and then like they keep getting like another 4/4 to deal with. That would be interesting. And then it would still probably not be played, but then it would be like more interesting by a lot. And it would push the idea of a control rogue, which is clearly something that we wanted to do because rogue only has currently like 1 or 2 main playstyles. No, it still wouldn't be OP because like you can still polymorph it, you can still hex it, you can still just kill it with like a 4/1, and then like kill the 4 for Nubian, and then you're just continuing to out-tempo your opponent who's only paying 9 mana. For these next ones, like I'm not going to talk about it too much, but a pirate theme was also being pushed. Like I think pirates are not in contention for strong enough, such that just adding the pirate tag to the other cards would have like just pushed the power level a bit more. Yeah, simple changes. I think those could have just gotten the pirate tag. Easy peasy. Oh, Poisoned Blade. This is the card I changed the most. Reducing it by a full 2 mana. I actually thought this would be pretty cute because it actually mirrors the old hero power immediate exactly then. Like it's so surprising to see a card that's reduced by 2 mana and still be bad. But at least it would be more interesting, and that's the point. I actually take so much offense to the fact that there's a card that bad that you reduce its mana cost by 2, and granted I also reduced the durability by 1, and it still probably wouldn't be played. Here we've got King's Defender. I actually thought this one was pretty easy. Just you're trying to push the taunt theme, and it turns out a 3 mana 3/3 actually isn't that bad, but you would never play it still. When you push the taunt theme a bit more with cards like Bolster and King's Defender, gain +1 durability for each minion with taunt you control, that makes it more interesting. And actually this was what people thought it was going to be before like the true card was revealed, and people still reviewed this card as like weak. Magnetor Alpha, 3 health for 4 mana, that was never going to get played. But a 4 mana 5/4, this pushes the envelope a bit more. And I especially like this card because it pushes the envelope in a new direction of warrior that you haven't seen before. There's Control Warrior, there's Patron Warrior. I don't even think you would put this card in Control Warrior. You certainly wouldn't put it in Patron Warrior. So you push the envelope a little bit towards the decks that don't exist. Good old Bolf Ramshield. Bolf Ramshield was a really cool idea. But the problem is that it's far too slow because it's actually basically a 6 mana 0/9 when your opponent just attacks your face and then like they kill your Bolf Ramshield. But if it has taunt, then it actually fights. I think this is a lot better than something that's unplayable. And it fits the theme so well, it like protects you with everything. It's a little bit saddening to me that such a cool effect is going to be put on a card that will never see the light of day. Again, this is just something small. If you're pushing things in a new direction, I feel like you could push the card to be a bit more powerful. 3 mana 4/3 still isn't thought of as strong, and there is still going to be no deck that runs even this new version of Master of Ceremonies, but it would certainly be a bit more interesting, and this is what gets people more excited to like make that spell damage deck, and like, oh man, I'm actually going to put in the Master of Ceremonies then. Mogars Champion was a complete joke. I added 2 health to it. I would have like considered changing a few other things, but part of the theme of this set was to simply have interesting stat lines. Like I would have made it an 8/8, but that would have made it too boring because it would have just been a giant. Now it's an 8/7 and it's still bad, but here we have it now. It's actually worth mentioning that the stats are big enough that it starts to not look bad, and that's like where you want it to be. Mogars Champion original was so bad that it would have been completely overlooked. And now this new card, it looks dumb, but I mean, it is obviously a dumb card, but the stats are so big that it actually incentivizes you to run it. Like, I compared the first one to Ogre Ninja, which was a card that was never going to be played at all. And it's like 6 mana, 6 stealth, a 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy. So I was thinking, wait, did I make this too strong by adding in 2 health? But then I realized, okay, Ogre Ninja was still a 6/6 and had stealth. Pushing this to an 8/7, I didn't see any problem with that at all. And that would have made this really interesting. And then maybe Mogar would actually win the grand tournament, huh? Oh, and also Ogre Ninja is 5 mana, now that we talk about it. Yeah, it's like, when Ogre Ninja is 5 mana and doesn't see play, actually it saw a very minor bit of play in Oil Rogue, so let me correct that. But mostly because of stealth. Like, adding 2 health to this card, absolutely no problem, I think. North Sea Kraken, a lot of people were praising Blizzard on like just making a big common card, and yeah, I actually thought about this some more as I tried to make some tweaks to it, and I was like, wait, this is actually a pretty good card. But yet, I still wanted to just push it even a little bit more, because let's face it, even though this is a cool card and a concept, to just put like a good common card, it still wasn't quite good enough. So this is like a very small change. You're just dealing 1 extra damage, but yeah, North Sea Kraken power. A lot of these cards are interesting. All you have to do, though, is to push a little bit more to still keep it possibly under the range of a card that would be considered good. It's just a lot closer now. It makes it a lot more exciting that there are a lot of cards worth considering. Sideshow Spell Eater, you might think that this buff of 2 health, which is really large, is like now strictly better than Boulder Fist Ogre. It's the same stats and it has an effect. But first of all, like, this effect isn't even strictly good. And second of all, I don't mind making a card strictly better than Boulder Fist Ogre, because Boulder Fist Ogre isn't being played. This isn't strictly power creep, because like copying your opponent's hero power is not necessarily good. This was an interesting effect. All it needed was like a bit more stats, and then like people would possibly consider it more for their deck. Ancestral Knowledge, probably one of the saddest things that I've seen. 2 mana Overlord, draw 2. I was actually thinking a bit as I made this change on whether or not this would be ridiculous for aggro decks. And I compared it with like Tempo Mage, which does run Arcane Intellect, and then I made the thought, okay, probably not, because 1, the Arcane Intellect is being used to both boost Flamewaker and Mana Worm, and 2, really, let's just throw Shaman a bone because they're kind of weak. This thing actually makes it a good card, and it makes it so that there's another card to consider. I thought that Blizzard had realized that like Overload was just a minor benefit, so you give a class that's considered weak, like a slightly better Arcane Intellect, that's not a bad thing. Good old Demon Fuse. So I actually thought about a lot of different ways to change Demon Fuse. The first thing is, okay, so Demon Fuse, you're intending to make something that's really reckless. And it just turns out that 2 mana wasn't quite enough. So if we're really going to change that theme, let's just make this a 1 mana card. Woo! Pretty wild. It's just that the original one was so bad, and this one like pushes it in a direction which it isn't already. I think that would be interesting. Here's perhaps a more sane one. I was thinking of the previous card, and it's like, well, that's kind of dangerous, isn't it? You just go like Flame Imp, and then Demon Fuse, and then see whether or not the opponent can deal with it, which I think like is reasonable enough. It just turns out to be really dangerous when you use it on a small minion, so like this one is a bit of a different card, and like it solves the problem of you rush the opponent down super fast. This one doesn't have a drawback, which I think is completely fair. It dodges the Imp King boss, which is like what I really didn't want the card to buff. Or, you know, you could just stick with your original card and basically it never gets played, and, you know, you could just print this card instead. Alright, Flame Lance, this was a cool effect. It had deal 8 damage to a minion. We've never seen that much damage on a minion, but the card was obviously going to be bad and never played in Constructed. And I was like, oh man, why are we even making a card like this? Why don't we just push this to 12 damage? Then it kills everything. Like, that's not even OP. Still bad, but like, it's more fun. And it doesn't kill everything, but, you know, at least it's like, whoop-pow. I also have the 4 mana version. This would be perfectly fair at 4 mana, although I would say for the purposes of Arena, I would probably make this a rare, and then like change the rarities around a bit. And now, here's something that's edgy. I would even consider making a 4 mana deal 12 damage to a minion. Like, I don't think even that really gets played that much in Constructed, but it would then become a really interesting like card to consider. Basically, I think a lot of the cards in the Grand Tournament were too conservatively priced, and some more edginess should have been done. It feels like the idea of there will always be bad cards, so, you know, let's just make some, and some of them are going to be bad. I felt like that was a little too much in this one. I wanted the cards to still be, like, not played in decks if you were going to go that route, but, like, barely out of it instead of way out of it. I think that's what everyone's looking forward to. By the way, when an expansion is released, I think that's the best time to change stuff. Similar to how I believe there were minor changes made when Goblins vs. Gnomes was released. Right, it was at that time that the Gadgetzan Auctioneer was done. Very, very minor changes with the gentle touch and then the continued vigilance to keep looking at the cards. So everyone knows Dr. Boom is really good, because we actually didn't print any 7-cost cards that were still competitive with Dr. Boom. And like, there's been an argument, Dr. Boom isn't OP, it's just that the 7-mana card slot is underpowered right now. Because we didn't print any that were actually comparable to Dr. Boom in this set, I think, like, okay, maybe we don't want to make 7 drops that good. So we're going to make a really, really small change. Like, there have been some crazy changes proposed for Dr. Boom, including making the boom bots like target random periods so that they could hit your own things, or to like make it to 0 to 3 damage. This is a really, really small change, but I think just enough to bring Dr. Boom down a small peg. And I don't think Blizzard should be afraid of making very, very small changes like this. If a card is really, really, really good, and you need to, like, you know, we're gonna continue to look at Dr. Boom, it's like, how about just a tiny, tiny small change then? And I think this type of fine-tuning is especially good in these types of games where you can actually change the card. Okay, this one's less small, but I think Paladin Shredder, it's really, really hard to make a 4-drop at this point that's competitive with Paladin Shredder. I was thinking the 3/3 was probably going to be less good than the 4/2, so I decided to go with the 4/2. I think this card is still good, but it's going to actually bring a lot more thought about the 4-drops that can be played. And finally, everyone's favorite deck. When people talk about Patron, they keep talking about like how they just one-turn kill everyone, and how the deck is completely broken. We need to nerf Battle Rage, we need to nerf Grim Patron, we need to nerf Warsong Commander. I think we just need a really gentle change to it. And if you make the Frothing Berserker down from a 2/4 to a 2/3, like, this actually, I think, changes the deck without killing it, which is really important to me, because I really do not want to see Grim Patron die. So no, you can't do something sneaky like, oh, I'm going to nerf the Grim Patron from a 3/3 to a 4/3, I'm so clever. No, that kills the deck. I'm going to make Battle Rage cost 1 more, that kills the deck. I'm going to make, like, there's so many changes. Emperor Thaurissan at the start of the turn, that's ridiculous, no one would ever play it, you kill so many decks. I think this is the least intrusive one out of almost anything. The point is, you want to change the deck so very, very, very slightly. All this does is stop you from doing 3 Whirlwinds, which doesn't happen a majority of the games, but is a cause of the great big outrage. Even if you only do 2 Whirlwinds, you usually still kill your opponent with 2 Frothing Berserkers. All this does is make it, like, make a few of the really insane plays still not played, and then, like, the deck in its whole is still playable. So I think this would be, like, a good change to look at in terms of, like, all the changes that would be possible I think this one impacts at least things because I don't think Emperor Thorsan should be changed. It's a really good card, which opened up a lot of interesting ideas. I don't think the Grim Patron itself should be changed because that's a really interesting card, and it's, I think, just right on point. And honestly, if the Grim Patron didn't exist, Frothing Berserker wouldn't need to change, but because it does and so many of the cards work together in concert so well, and you have to kill, like, if you have to slightly weaken one card, I think this one is the thing to aim it at. It's also worth mentioning that this card used to be a 3-mana 1/4 and was buffed to a 3-mana 2/4. If this were to be seen as too extreme, I could be like convinced to take a more gentle approach also and just revert the change back to a 3-mana 1/4. Because even if you do that, which might make it seem like it's almost not a change at all, because let's be honest, Frothing Berserker usually gets buffed by like 18. Something like that will still lower the win rate of the deck by a little bit, just because sometimes against some decks you do play the Frothing Berserker on 3 mana because it is a 3-mana 2/4. So you just make it a 3-mana 1/4, that's still fine. Apparently I made a typo. It's okay, we'll fix this in editing, but if you make a very small... I made a really big typo. I made a really big typo. We're going to fix this in editing. No, I don't want the... I want... No. Pretend that this deck actually says whenever a minion takes damage.